Welcome to the Amber Archive. Tonight, we are opening a particularly dark chapter of human history. This is a story that has been whispered for 500 years. A story of blood, of shadow, and of a monster who wore the face of a man. This video is designed as a sleep story and a deep history documentary. There are no sudden noises here. No flashing lights. Just the sound of the rain, the turning of pages, and the truth behind the legend. So, lie back. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let the tension of the modern world fade away. Let us travel back to the 15th century, to the misty forests of Transylvania. We all know the name Dracula. When we hear it, we think of the vampire. We think of Bram Stoker's Gothic castle, the bats against the moon, the creature who drinks the blood of the living to live forever. We think of fiction. But the truth is far more terrifying than any ghost story. Before he was a vampire in a novel, Dracula was a real man. He walked this earth. He breathed this air. He fell in love, he fought wars, and he committed acts of violence so extreme that even his enemies, the fearsome Ottoman Empire, trembled at the mention of his name. His name was Vlad III. Vlad Dracula. Or, as history remembers him, Vlad the Impaler. To understand the monster, we must first understand the man. And to understand the man, we must look at the world that forged him. The year is 1431. The location is the fortress city of Sigosora, in the region of Transylvania. Imagine a world of stone and cold iron. A world perpetually at war. To the west, the kingdom of Hungary and Christian Europe. To the east and south, the rising sun of the Ottoman Empire, a superpower expanding its borders with unstoppable force. Caught in the middle was a small, rugged principality called Wallachia. A buffer zone. A land soaked in blood. It was here that Vlad was born. He was not born a peasant. He was born a prince. His father was Vlad II, the voivode of Wallachia. But his father had another name, a title that would define the family's destiny forever. In 1431, Vlad's father was inducted into a secret knightly order by the Holy Roman Emperor. It was called the Order of the Dragon. In Romanian, dragon is Dracul. So, his father became Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Dragon. And following the language, the son of the dragon is Dracula. The son of the dragon. Or, as the word Dracul also means in modern Romanian, the son of the devil. Vlad's childhood was not filled with toys or comfort. It was a lesson in survival. He watched his father navigate a treacherous political game, switching sides between the Ottomans and the Hungarians just to keep his throne. But in 1442, the game went wrong. To prove his loyalty to the Ottoman Sultan Murad II, Vlad's father did the unthinkable. He handed over his two youngest sons as hostages. Vlad, who was just 11 years old, and his beautiful younger brother, Radu, were taken from their home. They were sent deep into the heart of the Ottoman Empire, to the fortress of Egrigaz in Anatolia. Imagine the fear of an 11-year-old boy. Taken from the cold forests of Wallachia to the heat of Anatolia. A prisoner in a golden cage. For 6 years, Vlad lived in the shadow of the executioner's sword. He knew that if his father betrayed the Sultan, he and his brother would die instantly. These 6 years destroyed his childhood, but they built the warlord. The Ottomans did not keep him in a dungeon. They educated him. They taught him logic, the Quran, and languages. But most importantly, they taught him the art of war. Vlad watched the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite soldiers. He learned their tactics. He learned their discipline. He learned how they used fear as a weapon. He learned about the psychological impact of terror. He was an excellent student. He absorbed everything. He was learning how to destroy his enemy by living among them. But while his brother Radu adjusted to this new life and even became friends with the Sultan's son, Mehmed, who would later become Mehmed the Conqueror, Vlad grew cold. He grew resentful. He hated his captivity. He hated his father for abandoning him. And he hated the Ottomans. The seed of darkness was planted in Egragos. By the time he was released and returned to Wallachia in 1448, Vlad was no longer a boy. He was 17 years old. But he came home to a graveyard. While he was away, the Hungarian warlord John Hunyadi had invaded Wallachia. Vlad's father had been assassinated, murdered in the marshes behind his palace. And his older brother, Mircea, had suffered a worse fate. The local nobles, the boyars, had blinded him with red-hot iron pokers and buried him alive. Vlad Dracula stood alone. His family was dead. His throne was stolen. He had enemies on all sides. Most men would have fled. Most men would have broken. But the son of the dragon did not break. He looked at the chaos around him, and he made a silent vow. He would not just rule Wallachia. He would purify it. And he would wash the land clean with the blood of those who betrayed his family. The dragon had woken up. Vlad's second reign began in 1456. He was 25 years old. He returned to a country that was broken. Lawlessness was everywhere. The noble boyars, the same men who had buried his brother alive, were corrupt, powerful, and disloyal. They treated kings like puppets, changing them whenever it suited their greed. Vlad knew that to rule, he had to be absolute. He had to become a monster to tame the monsters. History tells us of a chilling event known as the Easter Feast. Shortly after taking the throne, Vlad invited hundreds of these noble boyars and their families to his palace for an Easter celebration. Imagine the scene. A great hall. Music playing. Wine flowing. The boyars eating and laughing, thinking they could control this young, new prince just as they had controlled his father. But as the feast ended, Vlad's soldiers locked the doors. The music stopped. Vlad stood up. He pointed to the oldest boyars, the ones responsible for his family's death, and had them impaled on the spot. As for the rest, the younger nobles and their wives, he didn't kill them. Not yet. He marched them, still in their fine Easter clothes, 50 miles up the mountain to a ruined fortress called Poenary. He forced them to rebuild his castle. They worked until their clothes fell off their bodies in rags, and then they worked until they died of exhaustion. Vlad had sent a message: the chaos was over. The dragon was in charge. But his cruelty was not just for revenge. It was a calculated instrument of statecraft. He wanted to impose absolute order. Legend says that during his reign, you could leave a golden cup in the middle of the town square, and no one would dare to steal it. Not because they were honest, but because they were terrified. And then, there was the method of execution that gave him his name, impalement. We will not dwell on the gruesome mechanics of it here, out of respect for the quiet nature of this archive. But suffice it to say, it was a slow, agonizing way to die, designed to create maximum psychological terror. Vlad turned death into art. He arranged the stakes in geometric patterns. He created a forest of bodies. Why? Was he simply a madman? Perhaps. But he was also a small king fighting a massive empire. He had no massive army. He had no gold. His only weapon was fear. He needed the world to believe that he was not a man, but a devil, so that no one would dare attack him. But the attack came. In 1462, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, the man who had conquered Constantinople, marched on Wallachia with an army of 90,000 men. Vlad had only a fraction of that number. Vlad could not win a direct battle. So, he waged a war of shadows. He burned his own villages so the Ottomans would find no food. He poisoned the wells. He sent people with infectious diseases into the Ottoman camps to spread plague. And he attacked at night. The famous night attack at Targovist is the stuff of legend. In the dead of night, Vlad and his men rode into the Ottoman camp with torches and swords, aiming straight for the Sultan's tent. It was chaos. Confusion. Panic. Though they failed to kill the Sultan, they shattered the morale of the invincible Ottoman army. But the true blow, the blow that broke the Sultan's will, was waiting for them at the capital. As Sultan Mehmed approached the city of Targovist, expecting a siege, he stopped. His army stopped. The horses refused to move forward. There, stretching for miles, was the forest of the Impaled. 20,000 Ottoman prisoners, captured during the war, were displayed on stakes. A silent, ghastly army of the dead, rotting in the sun. It is said that even the birds would not land there. Sultan Mehmed, a man who had seen the horrors of war, a man who had brought down the walls of Byzantium, looked at this sight and famously said, "I cannot take the land of a man who does such things." The Sultan turned his army around and went home. Vlad had won. He had defeated a superpower with nothing but wood and fear. But victory forged in blood is fragile. Vlad had saved his country, but he had lost his soul. And soon, the very people he protected would turn against him. The dragon's fire was burning too hot, and it was about to consume him. Vlad the Impaler died in 1476. He died as he lived, in battle, ambushed in the misty forests he once ruled. His head was cut off and sent to Constantinople, preserved in honey, as proof that the dragon was finally slain. But legends do not die so easily. For 400 years, the name Dracula slept in the archives of history. He was remembered in Romania as a tough but just hero. But in Germany and Russia, pamphlets circulated telling stories of a mad tyrant who dipped his bread in blood. The world forgot the man. But the shadows kept the name. Fast forward to the late 19th century. The Victorian era. A time of gas lamps, fog, repressed desires, and a fascination with the occult. In London, an Irish theatre manager named Bram Stoker was looking for a story. He spent years researching European folklore, reading about Nosferatu and the undead. Originally, he planned to set his story in Styria, Austria. And his villain was going to be named Count Wamper. But in the summer of 1890, Stoker visited a library in the seaside town of Whitby. There, he found a book titled An Account of the Principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia. He read a footnote about a historical figure. A warlord who fought the Turks. A man whose name meant devil in the Wallachian language. Dracula. Stoker wrote a note in the margins, Dracula means devil. In that moment, the literary vampire was christened. Count Wamper died, and Count Dracula was born. Published in 1897, Dracula is not just a horror novel. It is a masterpiece of invasion literature. To understand the fear it caused, you must understand the Victorian mind. The British Empire was at its peak. They believed in science, reason, and modernity. They had mapped the world. They had conquered darkness with electric light. But Stoker unleashed a creature that science could not explain. Count Dracula does not come with an army like the Ottoman Sultan. He comes alone. He comes from the primitive, superstitious East to the modern, civilized West. He invades London not with cannons, but with infection. This is the brilliance of the novel. The vampire is not a warrior like Vlad. He is a parasite. Vlad the Impaler fought to keep invaders out of his land. Count Dracula fights to enter ours. The literary Dracula is a perverse mirror of the historical Vlad. Vlad impaled bodies to create boundaries. The Count pierces necks to dissolve boundaries, the boundary between life and death, between man and beast, between virtue and sin. When we read the novel closely, we see it is a clash of centuries. The heroes of the book, Van Helsing, Dr. Seward, Jonathan Harker, are men of science. They use blood transfusions, typewriters, and phonographs. They represent the modern world. Dracula represents the ancient world. The world of blood oaths, alchemy, and feudal power. Van Helsing famously says, "The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him." This is the ultimate horror of the dark academia genre. It is the realization that our modern knowledge is fragile. That there are ancient, dark things lurking in history that our science cannot categorize or kill. Stoker took the brutality of the real Vlad, the blood, the dominance, the aristocratic arrogance, and stripped away his humanity. He left only the hunger. The real Vlad drank wine while his enemies died. The fictional Dracula drinks the life force itself. But why does this figure haunt us? Why is Dracula the most adapted character in cinema history, second only to Sherlock Holmes? Because he represents the shadow self. In a society of strict rules, like Victorian England, or even our modern world, Dracula represents ultimate freedom. He does not die. He does not age. He takes what he wants. He is the ultimate rebel against the laws of nature and God. We fear him, but secretly, a part of us envies him. We envy his immortality. We envy his power to reject the finality of death. The vampire is humanity's attempt to answer the oldest question: what happens when we die? Dracula's answer is terrifying: you don't die. You change. You become the hunger. So, what happened to the dragon? History tells us he fell in battle. But legends say he never truly rested. Vlad was reportedly buried at the Snagov Monastery, on a lonely island in the middle of a lake. It was a holy place, quiet and isolated, a fitting tomb for a man who lived in such chaos. But the mystery does not end there. Decades later, in the 1930s, archaeologists opened the tomb at Snagov. They expected to find the bones of the prince, perhaps wearing his necklace with the dragon insignia. But when they lifted the heavy stone lid, the grave was empty. Only a few horse bones remained. Did grave robbers take him? Did the monks move him to protect him from desecration? Or did something else happen? The empty grave fueled the fire of the vampire myth. If the body is gone, perhaps the man never truly died. Today, if you travel to Transylvania, you will see the shadow of the dragon everywhere. Bran Castle, famously marketed as Dracula's Castle, stands tall on a cliff, welcoming millions of tourists every year. They come buying plastic fangs and capes, looking for the monster of Bram Stoker's imagination. But ask a local Romanian about Vlad, and you will hear a different story. To them, he is not a vampire. He is not a villain. He is a national hero. A strict, brutal father figure who defended his homeland against impossible odds. They do not see the stakes, they see the sovereignty. This creates a fascinating duality. Dracula is perhaps the only figure in history who is worshipped as a saint by some, and feared as a demon by others. He is a prism. When we look at him, we don't just see a historical warlord, we see our own fears reflected back at us. Why are we so obsessed with him? Why do we keep retelling this story, from Nosferatu to Twilight, from history books to video games? Because Dracula represents the part of us that refuses to be tamed. He is the raw, primal force of nature that civilization tries to suppress. He is the anger that wants to burn the world down, and the hunger that wants to live forever. In the end, the true horror of Dracula is not that he drinks blood. The true horror is that he was human. The atrocities in the forest of the Impaled were not committed by a supernatural beast. They were committed by a man. A man who justified his evil in the name of order and justice. The vampire is a fiction we created to comfort ourselves. It is easier to believe in monsters with fangs than to accept the monsters in human skin. Vlad the Impaler sought immortality through blood and war. He failed. His kingdom fell, and his body vanished. But Bram Stoker gave him the immortality he craved. Through the pages of a book, the dragon has achieved what he could not achieve in life. He has defeated death. As long as we tell his story, he will never truly die. But Vlad was not the only one obsessed with defeating death. While the vampire sought eternal life through magic and blood, another figure in the dark archive sought it through science. A man who went into graveyards not to feed, but to build. A man who wanted to be a modern Prometheus. His name was Victor Frankenstein. If you want to continue this journey into the dark side of ambition and the quest for immortality, you should listen to our deep dive into his tragic story next. Thank you for joining us in the Amber Archive. If this journey through history and shadow resonated with you, subscribe for more documentaries. Until next time, remain curious, and keep a light burning in the dark.